Welcome back to class, everybody, for our 1942 lecture series where we are hitting that most pivotal year where everything kind of hung in the balance during World War II. All right, today I am getting into, and I'm just going to kind of scratch the surface of the Holocaust. Now, typically, if there is one topic that kids come into my class and they know something about, usually it is the Holocaust from World War II. There's been countless movies made about it. It's been, and rightfully so, a very well-covered and well-documented part of human history and one of the worst tragedies to ever unfold. I mean, it's just kind of mind-boggling how horrifically mean the Nazis could be to Jews and other groups that they considered to be undesirables. Now, we're going to hit this a little bit more towards the end of the war because 1942, that's the year the Holocaust actually begins. Now, Hitler had been discriminating and just saying rotten, mean stuff and killing some Jews internally in Germany for the 10 years prior to this or so, decade or so before. But the Holocaust that we think of, like the extermination camps and the mass just wiping out of Jews, that doesn't begin until 1942, actually about halfway through World War II. And most Americans, your average American over here in the United States, or even an American soldier getting ready to fight in the war, they had no idea that anything like this was actually happening. Rumors had leaked out of Europe, and there were Jews that escaped and other people, and they would talk about like these camps that had been made in gas chambers. But up to this point in the war, we thought, well, yeah, Hitler hates the Jews and he's a mean, rotten guy. I mean, we're at war with him. We're trying to defeat him. But we thought a lot of those claims of like what was happening to Jews and this mass extermination, we thought most of that was overblown, that it was just like, oh, that's Jews coming out of Europe that have escaped Nazi control, and they're rightfully mad, but they're just trying to get us more fired up and get us in to conquer Hitler even quicker. And we were trying to play it smart. We wanted to win the war effectively. We didn't want to make any big blunders. Now, if we had known that how severe the Holocaust was, would that have changed the American strategy in the war? Because we're going to really go down and we fight in North Africa and Italy first as we try to soften Germany up. Maybe we would have attacked Germany head on much earlier had we really known the scale of what was going on. But we didn't. We knew Hitler didn't like Jews, but again, we didn't think he was trying to exterminate them all and kill every last one of them. Now, plans had kind of changed. Like Hitler, actually, he had always said that the Jews were a big problem and we need to do something about the Jews. Now, what does that exactly mean? He didn't really lay it out in his speeches, and he tries to keep the German people primarily like in the dark as to what his plans are, because he knows that this is kind of a controversial thing. Now, by 1942, the Nazis have such control locked down on Germany and really most of Europe. They don't have to be worried about public opinion that much. But years before, they did. So it was something that he kind of kept hush-hush, what his plans were going to be. Now, interestingly enough, the original plan was not to just exterminate all the Jews. And this was something I didn't learn about until I actually started teaching about World War II and really covering the Holocaust and different aspects of the war much more in depth. Originally, the plan was, check this out, what a bizarre idea they had. The Germans thought initially that they would be able to take out France and Great Britain very quickly. Now, Great Britain didn't fall as fast as they wanted to. But assuming they had been able to take out both of those sides, the plan was that they were going to round up all of the Jews in Europe. And remember, there weren't very many Jews in Germany. That's why it made it really easy initially for Hitler to target that group, because your average German person didn't even know a Jew. They were like 1% or slightly less than 1% of the overall German population. Now that Germany has invaded into Poland and into Russia, most of the Jews of Europe lived out in the east. There were millions of Jews in Poland. They made up a pretty big minority group over there. And there were a lot living in Hungary and Romania and in parts of the Soviet Union, much higher Jewish populations out that way. And all this new territory that Germany has just conquered in the last year. So that changes things. Now, I mean, in your home country, you had a very small chunk of Jews, and most of them have been, relocated into camps and stuff, or many have been killed at this point. But what are you going to do with these millions and millions of Jews out on the Eastern Front? Well, originally the plan was they were going to load them all up on boats and send them to Madagascar. You ever seen the movie, the cartoon Madagascar? Very tropical, hot island, and that's way down off of the coast of Africa. Now, why Madagascar? Well, I guess their reasoning was, to the best of my understanding, that that was a really isolated, hot tropical island that didn't have much going. It was way far away from Europe, and they thought that if they just got all the Jews out of Europe, that would make things better for the new German government that is taking hold there. And they didn't necessarily think they were going to kill all of the Jews, but they figured at least half of them would die of starvation and disease. So it would take a lot of them out, and then they would all be trapped on this one little island, and it would be really easy to keep an eye on them. Now, that plan does not pan out because Great Britain didn't fall, and Great Britain has a very powerful navy. So if they did start loading up these German ships with a bunch of Jews, there's a good chance the British Navy would stop them and pull the people off, or sink those ships and fight back. And Germany can't afford to lose a ton of resources, a lot of their ships and stuff. With Great Britain still out there on the waters, the only thing Germany's using at this point is their U-boats, really, to go out and fight back against the British Navy. So the Madagascar plan gets ruled out. So now they have to come up with another solution, or it ominously gets called the final solution to the Jewish question. This happens in early 1942 at the Wannsee Conference. All right. You don't have to write that down. That won't be on a test or quiz. But I just wanted you to know that it's in 1942 that this conference, and this dude that I have pictured above me, one of the most epically evil Nazis that you've probably never heard of before, his name is Reinhard Heydrich. He and his immediate boss, who is Heinrich Himmler, the head of the Gestapo and like the secret police, and also the Schutzstaffel. I'll talk about those groups down the road. But like the most hardcore Nazis, he kind of comes up with the idea of how to do this. And even though he's a pretty evil dude, he also is highly intelligent. And he sits down and crunches the numbers, and he realizes that, okay, there are this many Jews out in Europe that we estimate. We're going to have so many million out there. How can we most efficiently get rid of them and solve the Jewish question, okay, which basically that's another way of saying, how can we kill them all and get rid of them, exterminate them, so we never have to worry about them again? He ends up coming up with, and this is the most efficient way to do it, even though it's horribly evil and horrific, that we're going to make camps up that have gas chambers and crematoria, and we're going to gas these people, and then we're going to take them over to crematoria. We're going to incinerate them, turn them to dust, and that would be the most efficient way of getting rid of them. Early on in 1942, the camps weren't all set up, and they didn't have these gas chambers ready yet. So initially, how they were trying to get rid of Jews was they were using these mobile killing squads. This is something you should write down in your notes, and it's a crazy German word that's kind of fun to say. The Einsatzgruppen. All right, these are like the worst and most rotten units in the German army, and actually nobody got assigned to these units. You actually had to volunteer to be in them, and you knew exactly what you were going to be doing. The Einsatzgruppen there was four big groups, four kind of divisions of them that spanned out, heading out into the Eastern Front, and the regular German army was out ahead of them, many miles out front, fighting the Russian army. And the Einsatzgruppen would come in behind, and they would go into local towns, and they would round up Jews. Now, how could you tell a Jew from a non-Jew? Good question, because for the most part, Jews in Eastern Europe just look like white people, like everybody else living there. Well, actually, this is a sad part of the story too. In most of the countries that Germany had conquered up to this point, actually, a lot of them were just as anti-Semitic as Germany had been prior to Hitler. Jews were kind of a hated outcast type group in Europe for a variety of reasons. A lot of them stem back to religion and I don't want to get into all that right now, but the Jews had long been persecuted and hated in Europe, and many of these collaborators would rat out their Jewish neighbors. They would go and work with the German unit, the Einsatzgruppen, coming in and say, yeah, there's a bunch of Jews over in this neighborhood, and there's a synagogue over here, and let me go point them out for you and write down a list of names for you, and you can go round them up. So the Germans actually had a lot of help in doing this. Now, the Einsatzgruppen would their tactics were kind of like, they would take all these Jews, they'd round them all up in a town, they'd march them out into the woods, they would have a bulldozer or a tank with a shovel fixed to it, they would go dig out a big trench, or sometimes they'd make the Jews dig their own trench, and then they'd just come in and machine gun them all down, kill them, and bury them. Now, there was a variety of problems with that from the German perspective, and this is what Heydrich kind of goes over at the Wannsee Conference, that, hey, why are we wasting bullets and resources and manpower on on killing Jews. We need those bullets and we need those soldiers to fight the Russians because the war isn't going incredibly well. It could kind of go either way out on the Eastern Front. So he makes an argument, and this ends up winning out, that a much more efficient way of doing it would be to create death camps. So like Auschwitz is probably the most well-known, and then Treblinka is another one that were death camps where they had like the gas chambers and crematoria right on the same site, and they would exterminate huge batches coming in off of trains. They'd go incinerate them, and that'd be that. Now, why would you need the incinerators? Couldn't you just go bury the bodies? Well, we're talking millions of bodies, so that's a lot of bodies to bury. And a problem that the Einsatzgruppen had run into, they would go out and dig these big trenches where they would just go machine gun down a bunch of Jews, thousands at a time sometimes, and when they would bury it up, when the bodies would start to decompose, gases would build up underground, and then sometimes they would explode, and you'd have body parts all over. And bottom line, the Germans kind of want to keep this hush-hush. They don't want the whole world knowing what they're doing. Now, if they end up conquering the world and take it all over, well, then they'll probably take pride in this, and they would have kind of shown what they did. But at this point, they don't want word out on this. They try to keep it a secret, and even a lot of people in Germany weren't told. They knew that Jews were being persecuted, but they didn't know exactly how it was all playing out and what all the details were. So anyway, know that and this would be something I'd want you to add into your notes. If you look at the 11 million people that were killed in the Holocaust, so that's a good number for you to write down. 11 million people died in the Holocaust. 6 million were Jews. 5 million were just other people that Hitler said were undesirable. You could be homosexual, you could be a communist, you could be just one of his opponents. Maybe you were some other minority group. You happen to be a Black or Asian person living over there. That was the other 5 million, kind of just anybody Hitler didn't like, basically. Now, when we were looking at the 11 million people that died in the Holocaust, about half were killed by the Einsatzgruppen, and the other half were killed in the camps, in the death camps and extermination camps, okay? They also had work camps, too, where they would basically use Jews as like slave labor and work them to death. And then once they got so tired or they weren't able to work or they got sick, then they would ship them over to a death camp and just take them out. So anyway, this scratches the surface on the Holocaust. Now, please know that the Holocaust is kind of a world history topic. So this is something you could do a whole semester class on, just the Holocaust. In here, this is an American history class. I think when we're covering World War II, how can you not talk about the Holocaust? I have to cover it somewhat, but also understand no Americans died in the Holocaust, really. We're over here in America. Hitler can't get any of the Jews living in our country. So it really fits more into a world history class or a European history class. However, just know, I know a lot of people are very interested in the Holocaust for good reason. It's a horrific and fascinating topic all at the same time. I will be doing another lesson or two down the road. But this one, I just wanted to give you a few notes on it and kind of let you know that it's in early 1942, right around the same time the Japanese internment starts up in America. That's when the final solution comes out, and they start to have a master plan of how they are going to mass exterminate all of the Jews of Europe. So that's what I got for you today. If you have any questions or anything, definitely hit me up, and I'm happy to give you clarification or talk a little more in depth with you on this. Bye.